I would call to order the Village of Westmont Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for May 13th, 2015, 7 o'clock. May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Carmichael?
Here.
Commissioner Van Buren is here. Commissioner Pill?
Here.
Commissioner Thomas?
Here.
Commissioner Bartel?
Here.
Chairman Richard? Oh,
Here.
did I call you? No. And Commissioner Sharp.
Oh, here again.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Okay, if you would please all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have two requests while you're standing. If you're going to give any testimony this evening, either for or against any item on the agenda, you have to be sworn in. So if you please raise your hand, say after me, I swear that any testimony I give this evening shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. I would secondly ask that you silence any and all electronic devices. All right, first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our April 8 meeting. May I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve?
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Pill, seconded by Commissioner Van Buren. A question on the motion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel?
Yes.
Commissioner Carmichael?
Yes.
Commissioner Sharp?
Yes.
And Chairman Richard.
Yes. Okay. Open hearing, new business, planning and zoning item 15013, Atia Carter regarding the property located at 2024 South Cass, Westmont, Illinois, for the following in the B1 Limited Business District. Item A, special use permit request to operate a ground floor hair salon. Item B, zoning code variance request to reduce the number of required off-street parking stalls. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. My name is Atia Carter, and I'm a hairstylist here in the Westmont area, which I have been for the past, it'll be 8 years in October. And I'm looking to get to be a salon owner. I feel that, now it's time, I'm ready to open up my own establishment here in the village of Westmont. I have a lot of, professional customers who also feel that, it's time for me to venture off into my own establishment.
Okay, very good. One of our requirements that we have imposed on us by state law is you're asking for a variance. Would you enumerate as to what the hardship is?
Yes, sir. I'm asking for a parking variance. I have spoken with the owner who owns the property that I'm trying to rent, and he did, notify me that I will have about 34 parking spaces. 37 parking spaces.
But it's physically impossible for you to come up with any more parking spaces. You cannot expand property either to the north, south, east, or west. Is that my? So
Okay.
therefore, it's imposing a hardship on you.
Okay. And that's the reason why we did go ahead and, I did go ahead and pay the $500 for the parking variance to take care of that as well.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Could we go to staff input, please?
Yes. As Ms. Carter stated, it is difficult for her to expand her parking. She is landlocked, and she has a very small tenant space. It's only about 350 square feet. And she's requesting a special use to have a service use in the downtown where we would typically like to see retail and restaurants. But in this case, it's a very small tenant space. And because of the size, we feel that it's suited for her business. And it's already previously been operated as a salon, so.
And all the parking that's on site is already spoken for by the residential tenants, or?
Yes, it's currently considered underparked by our zoning code, but our zoning code has very high regulations for studio apartments. So we don't differentiate between studio apartments and 3-bedroom apartments. Any apartment would need 2.5 parking spaces per unit. So clearly this, the number of apartments aren't going to need, 40 parking spaces. So whenever we've been out there and we've looked at aerial photos over time, the lot has never been overparked. So we feel that this would be a good use.
So
Where did the
figuring-
37 parking spots come from? How did that just enter this equation? I mean,
I believe the landlord owns the property next door to the commercial space, so I think he's thinking that there could be some parking in between, but we feel that there's sufficient parking immediately behind the building here.
because you can't loan parking from another building.
Yeah, you would have to have a signed agreement to do that, so, but we feel that there's public parking in front, and there's sufficient parking behind the building that's privately owned.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We'll go to the public, if you will. Anybody who wishes to comment on this, if you'd please come up to the podium and sign in, and thank you.
My name's Renee Sturgeon. I'm the owner. I'm the owner of Taco Express. I'm the owner of 14 South Cass, and I'm the owner of the rest of that building. Now, not counting Taco Express behind it, which is enough for my workers, but it's 14 South Cass. There is about 17 spaces that is not being used. Okay, and that's 14 South Cass. That's a big lot. Plus, I have 37, and they have 17, no, 37, I counted 37 spaces. Some of them are handicapped, they don't drive. They're all studio apartments. There's 16 studio apartments. Half of them don't drive. And they're early people. They're in their late, some are, like I said, handicapped. I do have spaces. I have enough spaces to help her start. It was, as you well know, for 10 to 12 years, it was a beauty shop before. Small service, that's what it is. And she's serving the African-American people, and she wants to continue serving them.
All right, thank you very much for your input.
Thank you.
And aside then, Jill, it might not be a bad idea if we would maybe recommend considering later on a new parking requirement for a studio.
Yes, that's definitely on our list of things to
Is it?
update in the code, yes.
You're way ahead of me. Is there anybody else from the public who will speak on this issue? Seeing no hands raised, we'll close the public comment. Let's start with Doug Carmichael, if you would, please.
This seems to me to be a very reasonable request and a good use of the space. It's been used for it before, and there's no real change in the parking situation. It seems adequate. I don't have a problem with it.
Commissioner Van Buren,
I agree with what Commissioner Carmichael said.
Commissioner Pill,
I have no issues.
Commissioner Sharp,
No issues.
Commissioner Bartel.
No issues. Very
And I
supportive.
also. That, we can't approve it, we can only recommend approval, but let me be first to say welcome to our downtown. Okay, since we have a request for a special use, may we have a reading of the findings of fact, please?
Atia Carter for 20 to 24 South Cass Avenue in Westmont requests for a special use to allow a ground floor hair salon. Criteria number 1, the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the special use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. The proposed owner is licensed with the state and proposes to follow proper safety and sanitation guidelines. All operations will be conducted indoors, and this use will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare. Criteria 2, the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, or substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. A salon previously operated from this location without issue. The proposed use will be conducted indoors, and the use will not generate adverse noise, light, traffic, odor, or have other negative impacts on surrounding properties. Criteria 3, the establishment of the special use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding property for uses permitted in the district. The tenant space is located within an existing commercial building, and the surrounding area is fully developed. This proposed use at this location will not impact future development or redevelopment of surrounding properties. Criteria 4, adequate utilities, accessways, drainage, and/or other necessary facilities have been or are being provided. The existing building is currently serviced by adequate utilities, accessways, and other necessary facilities. This proposed use will not require additional utilities or facilities. Criteria 5, adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress and egress so designed as to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. Limited off-street parking is available for this business, and there is sufficient public parking in close proximity to the property. The property is readily accessible by public transit. The property is served by public sidewalks and is located in the village's central business district. Given these factors and the relatively low volume of customers visiting the property at any one time, this use will not adversely impact traffic congestion. Criteria 6, the special use shall in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located, except as such regulations may in each instance be modified by the village board pursuant to the recommendation of the Plan Commission. Except for an off-street parking variance which the applicant seeks, the proposed use and the proposed property conform to all other zoning and other regulations of the village.
If you are in agreement with these findings, would you please raise your hand? We are unanimous in agreement, therefore the findings of fact for a special use are approved and adopted. Under Planning and Zoning Item 15013, I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees. Item A special use permit request to operate a ground floor hair salon.
So move.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Van Buren, seconded by Commissioner Bartel. Question on the motion? May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Pill,
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel,
Yes.
Commissioner Carmichael,
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes, and Commissioner Sharp,
Yes.
and Chairman Richard.
Yes. Okay. May we have a reading of findings of fact for a zoning code variance request?
Request for a variance to reduce the number of required off-street parking spaces for 20 to 24 South Cass Avenue. Criteria 1, the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return if permitted to be used only under the conditions allowed by the regulations in the district in which it is located. Due to the property's limited size and current improvements, there is no space on the property to install additional off-street parking stalls. The property is located in the central business district, which is generally characterized by limited off-street parking. Given these restraints, most uses at this location would require a parking variance to operate, and the applicant cannot yield a reasonable return without this variance. Criteria 2, the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. There is no space upon the property to add off-street parking, and the existing off-street parking is already occupied by an apartment building on the property. Criteria 3, the variation, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. Sufficient public parking exists for this business, and the property is located in close proximity to public transit. The business will have limited patrons on site at any one time, and the applicant will space out her appointments, thereby limiting public parking congestion. As such, this use with the proposed parking variance will not alter the essential character of the area.
If you agree with these findings, please raise your hand. We are unanimous in agreement, therefore the findings of fact published are hereby adopted and approved. I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees. Item B, a zoning code variance request to reduce the number of required off-street parking stalls.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, there's motion by Commissioner Carmichael, seconded by Commissioner Pill. Question on the motion? May we have roll call, please?
Commissioner Bartel,
Yes.
Commissioner Carmichael,
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes, Commissioner Sharp,
Yes.
and Chairman Richard.
Yes.
I'll vote yes, too.
Commissioner Pill,
Yes.
thank you.
Did you get a manager? Okay, ladies, you have our recommendation for approval, but it's only a recommendation. The village board will be the ones voting for this. Congratulations and good luck to you. Thank you. Planning and zoning item 15014, Brian Kearney regarding the property located at 700 East Ogden Avenue for the following in the B2 Limited Business District. Item A, special use permit request to operate a driver's education school.
How you doing? Thanks for having me. I would like to, I'm intriguing about a special permit so I can put a driver's education facility on a lower level of 700 East Ogden Avenue. Personally, my experience has been 10 years in driver's education in the private level and high school level, both management and as an instructor. I feel like I got the backing. Personally, I've come from a family of entrepreneurs. My father was an entrepreneur. We lived right a couple of blocks down from Manning off of Blackhawk, so I'm really familiar with the area, and I'm really excited to come back to the area. What the purpose would be is to have a driver's education facility for students, high school students preferably, to come in after hours. Again, with the school year, 10 out of the 12 years, or 10 out of 12 months, we will be there from like 4 to 6 and then 6 to 8. So, you know, the kids being back and forth, most of the businesses will already be closed. The parking lot will be free and empty for drop-offs. The requirements for the parking are minimum because, again, the parents are dropping them off. If you don't know, the building itself has behind rear parking and then east and west parking. So there's nothing on Ogden Avenue. So it's very, very easy for the kids safely to come into the building, go to the back, and then enter that way. I'm open to any questions that you have.
Okay. Staff, would you care to comment?
Thank you, Chairman. This is a very similar proposal to the previous hair salon in that it's a small tenant space, less than 1,000 square feet. By code, we are required to have a special use because it's considered a school with more than 10 students. In this instance, it's typically going to have no more than 15 students with 1 employee and 1 car on the property. And the students will be dropped off by parents or family members, and so there won't be an issue with parking or congestion for the office building, so we don't have any concerns with this.
Thank you. Is there any public comment? Anybody wish to speak on this issue? Seeing nobody raising their hands, we'll close the public comment. And let's start with Commissioner Bartel, if you would, please.
I think it's a good idea. My only question was, is there any behind the wheel work? Is it all classroom? That was my impression, but I wasn't sure.
For the building itself, it will just be a classroom. For behind the wheel, we'll take our own car and pick up the students from the house, and we drop them off from the house.
Okay,
So none of the behind the wheel will be anywhere near Ogden. Well, maybe if, you know, we're driving on Ogden Avenue from their house during the drive, but yeah. In the building, there will not be.
Okay, that was the only question. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Sharp?
I think my only question is about security and safety of the children. I don't see from the photos available that there's a lot of site lighting in the parking lot. And since this is after hours, especially in the winter as it gets dark, what do you plan to do to ensure that the kids get picked up by their parents and aren't left stranded?
Sure. Well, there is security around the building. There are cameras around the building and outside the building. But personally, you know, in my 10 years experience, I wouldn't leave a kid. The class is over, I'm staying outside until everybody's, you know, picked up. I've waited literally 45 minutes for kids just to wait for their parents, and I don't have a problem with that. You know, I would never leave a kid stranded or just alone because it is going to be pretty empty, you know, and a kid could be vulnerable in that situation. So my personal assurance is that I will wait for every student to be picked up in those situations.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's it.
Commissioner Pill?
Yeah, I support this also. I think this is what this building was designed for. And this is the exact kind of tenant that belongs. This is not really a retail building of any one means or sorts, and this is exactly what belongs in there. So, got my vote.
Commissioner Van Buren?
I agree. Good luck.
Thank you.
Perfect fit.
Commissioner Carmichael?
Yeah. I concur.
And I agree with my fellow commissioners. I think a perfect fit for the building. May we have a reading of the findings of fact for a special use, please?
Brian Kearney for 700 East Ogden Avenue requests for a special use to allow a driver's education school in the B2 General Business District. Criteria 1, the establishment, maintenance, or operation of the special use will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, morals, comfort, or general welfare. The proposed school will benefit the public by offering driving instruction to teenagers, and the use will occur completely indoors in an existing office building. The use will comply with all village ordinances and will not adversely impact the public health, safety, or welfare. Criteria 2, the special use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, nor substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. The proposed use will not generate adverse traffic, noise, or parking, and all classes will be conducted indoors in an existing office space. The proposed use will have no adverse impact on surrounding properties. The establishment of the special use will not impede the normal and orderly development and improvement of surrounding properties for uses permitted in the district. The proposed use will occur in an existing office building which contains sufficient off-street parking. Surrounding properties are fully developed, and this use at this location will not impact the ability of surrounding properties to redevelop. Criteria 4, adequate utilities, access ways, drainage, and/or other necessary facilities have been or are being provided. The proposed use will occupy an existing office building which is served by adequate utilities, off-street parking, and safe means of ingress and egress. Criteria 5, adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress and egress so designed as to minimize traffic congestion in the public streets. The property has existing safe means of ingress and egress, sufficient off-street parking. The proposed use is not expected to generate significant traffic. Criteria 6, the special use shall in all other respects conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it is located, except as such regulations may in each instance be modified by the village board pursuant to the recommendation of the Plan Commission. No variances are sought with this proposed use, and the use otherwise conforms with all regulations of the village. Criteria 7, the proposed use meets the special conditions of Special Condition 2. The proposed use will not cause appreciable traffic congestion or hazard to pedestrian safety. Students will primarily be dropped off at the entrance to the building away from traffic. The property contains sufficient off-street parking. Class sizes and hours of operation are limited.
If you agree with these findings, please raise your hand. We are unanimous in agreement, therefore the findings of fact for a special use are hereby approved and adopted. I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees, Planning and Zoning Item 15014, Item A, the special use permit request to operate a driver's education school.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Bartel, seconded by Commissioner Carmichael. A question on the motion? May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Carmichael?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel?
Yes.
Commissioner Sharp?
Yes.
Chairman Richard?
Yes. All right, sir, you have our recommendation for approval, but again, it's only a recommendation. And the Board of Trustees will be the final vote on this. Good luck to you, sir. Next item, Planning and Zoning Item 15015, Dr. Akhtar Parvez, regarding the property located at 6125 South Cass Avenue for the following in the C1 Commercial District. Item A, special use permit request to operate a ground floor medical office. Item B, zoning code variance request to reduce the number of required off-street parking stalls. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mohammed Akhtar. I'm here on behalf of Dr. Pervez, MD. I'm here tonight to request a youth permit for the ground floor of 6125 South Cass Avenue, and in essence to add a pharmacy on the ground floor in advance for the rezoning clauses that have been added after the year of 2011 for a retail space to be added on that property. That's basically it.
Okay, I'm a bit confused, if I may. I see nothing on that, a ground floor medical office. Now we're talking about a pharmacy.
I'll explain the pharmacy
Okay.
during my,
I'll rely on you.
okay. Great.
Okay, would you address the zoning code variance request for the required off-street parking, the hardship? Why is it a hardship on you? Are you prepared to address that?
Parking.
It's, the zoning code variance request is because the parking lot does not have sufficient parking.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I thought it had, what did it have, 42 spaces?
Right, because the parking requirements are, I believe, 38, yes.
Excuse me, sir, could you identify yourself?
I'm sorry, my name's Anthony Gary. I'm the general contractor.
I see. Would you
So I've
also
been
sign in, please? So,
Yes.
Jill, since there seems to be some confusion, perhaps you could help us
Yes.
with the hardship for the variance.
Yes, I'll give a little bit of background. We've been working with the applicant for several months to resubmit some drawings to address some of the staff concerns with the proposal. As we mentioned in the staff write-up, the proposal went before the Economic Development Committee several months ago and received a negative recommendation because this is located in a TIF district and does not bring retail to the area, which is what we'd like to see on the ground floor. Because there were a lot of concerns, staff asked the applicant to revise the site plan and landscaping to address some of the things that had come up during that meeting. We asked for better circulation around the parking lot. We asked for additional landscaping. And then we asked if there was the potential to put a pharmacy on the ground floor to bring in some retail, since it's mostly service on all floors. So yesterday, we received the revised or this week, we received the revised site plan and landscaping plan, which I passed out. Our landscape architect has not had a chance to review it yet, so we would like to ask that the item, after discussion, be continued so that we have thorough staff comments to provide to you. But they have addressed a lot of the comments. The general contractor has provided additional parking. Previously, there was not sufficient parking, and now they're only lacking 3 parking spaces to meet their total parking needs. They have also added a large landscaping buffer for trees in the middle of the parking lot. There's additional screening for the residential neighbors. There's cross-access between the properties to the north and the south. They've removed the large canopy that exists currently and then would propose to do a smaller canopy, and that way the fire department can better access the site. And then we would like to see increased landscaping in the front yard to match some of the newer projects that we're going to see, like Mariano's on 63rd Street. So we feel that if this property is not going to redevelop, at least we can have a good appearance from the street and have increased landscaping, circulation, and a good buffer for the neighbors.
Now, since this new information has just been passed out to us, we haven't had a chance to peruse it. I agree, I would like to see this move back, but on our original packet that we received before the weekend, you had a bunch of recommendations.
Right.
Are you concerned that most of them have been addressed in this new site plan?
We feel that most of them have been addressed. The parking has been increased. The canopy will now provide much better fire department circulation around the site. We're pleased with the tree canopy that'll be able to be part of the parking lot now. There are still things that we'd like to work on, especially like the landscaping along Cass Avenue. I think that should be addressed. And then would you like to address any of the changes that you've made to the site plan to the commission, just to show, the efforts that you've made to work with the comments?
Not really.
Okay.
Jill, I'll just chime in that you mentioned the pharmacy use is something that wasn't part of the staff write-up, has been
Right.
added.
Right.
Drugstores are a permitted use in the C1 district, so that does not need any sort of special use or special approval
Right.
to have that as a component of this. I do have a question about the cross-access. You said that's
Yeah,
now,
I did that too.
now granted. How do they go about getting cross-access?
So what we would recommend is they either do the curb cuts on their property at this time so that they can be connected to in the future when the property redevelops, or that as part of the special use, that it would be a condition that if the properties were to redevelop on either side, that they would have cross-access in the back.
In back.
Yeah, so
There's a different elevation. The Meineke shop next door has a different elevation than this. And to the north is the, used to be Clark Station, undeveloped property.
right.
But they would like a cross-access.
We would like to see
Oh.
cross-access as part of the TIF in that, in the C1 business district.
The write-up, the staff write-up included actually a nice depiction of what like 3 standalone buildings in the strip could look like with access along the rear, and that's what staff had in mind.
Right.
What I would prefer, it requires the cooperation of the neighbors to grant a cross-access easement. I would like between now and next month, the owner to approach his neighbors and negotiate that, and that's something that gets recorded against title to the property. See if they can work something out, and it would be effective upon redevelopment of either property, the property on either side, there wouldn't be any obligation to build out anything at this point. It would only be if the other properties developed. But as Jill said, they could at least include a curb cut for that. But I mean, it's a pretty simple agreement as long as you have an owner on either side that is willing to grant it and understands the benefits of it.
Actually, John, in this particular instance, wouldn't require a curb cut. There are no curbs anywhere.
Curb cuts may be the wrong, I think what we mean
An
is.
access, if you would.
Access point along the
Yeah,
rear.
okay.
Right.
Because when I spoke to Jill earlier today on this, there would be nothing to prohibit this developer from asphalting a drive-through to the end of his property line. And then it could be just extended by the owner of the other property when and if he so chose.
But you're saying
Would
there
there be a
needs to be
problem
an
with that?
agreement with
At
those
what point?
property owners.
Right, so one neighbor does not have to allow access
Right.
to another neighbor. It's something that we encourage when there's a plat of subdivision. It's usually a requirement of a plat. Here, it's a special use, so you can impose reasonable special conditions on approval of a special use. One of the conditions is that provides better traffic circulation, cross-pollination of customers, et cetera, makes planning sense. Go talk to your neighbors, see if you can get an agreement hammered out.
If there is a signed agreement, then one neighbor would not be able to back off from that agreement in the future if it were a large development or something?
If it were sold or whatever, no, that would run with
It
the
would follow
property.
with the property.
Yeah, it would get recorded against
Okay,
title.
I think that would be a good idea.
And they may come back and say, boy, we tried, and the other neighbors are being pigheaded or don't know what's gonna happen with their property or whatever the reason, we can't negotiate it. But if they're ever willing to do it, it can be a condition of this approval that you'll continue to work with your neighbors to attempt to get cross-access. And the village can also speak to those neighbors if there's a problem.
Okay, any further comments, Jill?
We're available for any questions. I understand there's a lot of history with the site, and there's
Okay.
a lot of background, so we can, Joe, did you have any other comments that you wanted to mention? Joe's worked a lot with the applicant too, to, make recommendations and, try to provide cross-access.
I really don't have any additional comments from some of the discussions we've had already. That I think that if we were to get the project to have that future cross-access, whether it just be asphalted, it could actually serve as either additional parking that they're short of until that time, or as a place to put the dumpster, because the current dumpster enclosure, I don't think you're proposing being moved.
Right.
But I would say that the maintenance of it has lacked over time, and it could potentially serve as an area to place that and out of the way, so.
One of the problems that could cause, though, is that as the things now are, the adjacent property is short of parking. And you put a cross-X there, you're encouraging a spillage of the parking of the one into the other, when this one is already slightly deficient. Do you understand what I mean?
Absolutely. It's definitely something to consider, but I just think in the grand scheme, we have to think about the future and the fact that when these properties eventually redevelop, we do want that cross-access to occur. But it's definitely something that they would need to monitor.
The doctor's not here tonight. Probably would be helpful to hear from him.
That was to be my next comment, that I don't believe either of you two gentlemen are able to speak for the owner of the property. Am I correct in assuming that?
But this is his son.
I'm his direct relative, but
But you are not he
yes.
who owns the property.
So in that case, no. Then
You don't have a legal authority to speak for him and to
Well,
make...
no, I mean, anyone can speak, can be a representative for.
Yes,
an
but
owner.
we're asking for commitments out of this.
Yes, you can ask to have the owner present, but
Excuse
it doesn't
me.
prevent them
This
from
is the owner
saying,
right here.
so I have my mother here tonight, but
Please, if you would, come up and
she.
sign in, if you would, please, miss.
I signed it.
I'll just sign myself.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Wahiba Akhtar, and I am his office manager. And he working is far away, is Indiana border and Chicago. And I have 3 children. My dream, I want to open nearby my house. And we bought this building 2010, December. And we starting the project. We talked, we have it before privileges for the Westmont. Half we finish, and half project we finish. And half we don't have money, and then I apply the loan. And then, it's a take time for the loan process. And then we start again, and we try again for the village of Westmont. They denied the zoning something problem, and we fighting, I think it's almost 6 months, maybe more, for we try to open the urgent care center soon as possible. And I don't know, I try our best, because this area don't have any doctor office and big facilities and help people, And I live in Burridge, not far away. And I don't know, what can I do?
That's enough. Are you the doctor's wife?
Yes, I am the wife, and I am working with his office manager.
I understand.
Last 10 years.
Can you understand where we're coming from? I believe it would be very helpful
Yeah,
that we have new information that we're going to have to look at.
yeah,
And secondly, I would feel very more comfortable if the doctor could be here. that
Yeah,
we
I
could
know.
Discuss with him. Do you think that would be possible?
yeah,
month
sure.
from
If
now.
you want to, I call him. You'd want to talk to him on the phone, because
We can-
this morning he told me, and today he's have a lot of surgeries. He's a cardiologist, and he can come the 7 o'clock, and he say I can make it. That's why my son, he's a medical student too, and we will try to explain you. We want to,
But we have a lot of questions that have to be answered, and I myself would feel
yeah,
more comfortable having the doctor answer them. And staff could tell you, if this were to be postponed till next month, we could give you a definite day and time, and then the doctor could make time for
yeah,
his
sure.
schedule.
Why not? Yes, he do that.
You're amenable to that then?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
okay. The next month.
I would just recommend that in motion to postpone this, it'd be a motion to continue the public hearing until the June meeting and postpone the item until then.
Would anybody care to make that motion?
And if there's any other comments that you'd like for us to include or to discuss with the doctor in the
Okay, yeah.
forthcoming month, we can do that as well.
Yeah, let's go through,
So would Bob Fleck look at this then between now and the next meeting?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
okay, let's start with Commissioner Carmichael. Come with any thoughts you think that maybe should be added to this.
But I wonder how a building permit was granted before the special use was permitted. Isn't that?
Yes, it is part of the question. It was apparently a staff oversight, and some permits were granted without the proper special use approval. And once we realized that, this time around, we made sure that they applied for the special use.
I guess my only other question, the whole thing, is how this type of facility would affect future development of that corridor, of the properties on each side. As a question, I certainly have, I would question that.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
No.
Okay, Commissioner Van Buren.
This has been a long process, and this has been a real eyesore. It's started, and then apparently, and doctor's wife here has indicated that there were a lot of problems, first of all, with finance. Secondly, with trying to meet your requirements. And now they finally have secured the financing, is that right? And the pharmacy was not part of their program, but that in order to put this in the what do you call, B2, but also
C1.
enterprise, so that we encourage them to put in a pharmacy, is that right?
Yes, because there was no retail on the ground
Right, there was
floor,
no
we
retail.
we encouraged them to include a pharmacy as part
On
of
the other hand, this the doctor owns. If we don't allow something to go ahead on this now, it's gonna continue to be an eyesore and probably a great problem for them too. So whatever we can do to expedite it at this point, I think we should do. And I think the compromise of putting in some retail probably is sufficient to answer that. So hopefully we can get this straightened out.
Commissioner Pill.
Yeah, this is clearly not what we want for this area. We're somewhat between, I don't want to necessarily say a rock and a hard place, but we've got sort of a history here, as we've indicated. It's a part project that's partly done. It's been 5 years, I guess, it sounds like, since they acquired it in 2010. Is there going to be x-ray machines, or how about things like CAT scans and stuff like that? What, all of that will be there? But not a surgical center.
In the small, we will make the surgical center 2 room. One room we make the room and surgical.
Local type surgery. So there does represent some convenience, and as that area develops, this would be one form of bringing in some traffic. I think the pharmacy does add a retail component. But I think the biggest thing here, and this is sort of the point that I made with the proposed oil change facility, I think we need to make sure that in the case of new construction, we can dictate how we want it to look, feel, and smell, and taste. In the case of remodeled construction, I think we at least have to have the streetscapes match. And I know you're talking to the applicants about that, and I'm hoping they'll be receptive. I just did a quick cursory glance at this plan, and while it looks to be an expansion of what we have in the original, I'll certainly trust your opinions on this and make sure, and it does look like it's still a little thin on the Cass Avenue side. But I think that's something that's really important, and as we get Mariano's, we get this facility, we get the oil change facility on board, this is gonna start to come together. And it does take years to do that. That's the whole idea behind a comprehensive plan, but I think we need to make sure that that happens with this project, because that will make it absorb into the neighborhood. I anticipate most of that stuff across the street on both sides of them being torn down at some point. I mean, that's just the way that's gonna go down in that area. And this is gonna be left standing, so at some point it will be the oldest building, so if we can make it look good on the front, that's gonna help a lot. That's my opinion.
It's not a bad-looking building from the get-go.
It's just stark.
Well, because it's been it's been neglected. So it's but.
Agreed.
Commissioner Sharp?
I think my only comments for the applicants, and perhaps to continue working with staff, is that if we're talking about this back cross-access concept, the site plan that we have today is one directional from the south, traveling north and exiting north. I think I would ask that we could look at a phase 2, I guess, geometry that would work for vehicles traveling both north and south in the back access. I think that's more true to the concept. And that doesn't mean you have to stripe the parking lot that way or show it striped, but at least provide the dimension for 90-degree parking. I think would protect the interest long-term of that concept.
Commissioner Bartel?
I think the project itself is positive. It certainly needs to have the reconstruction of that old Heritage Bank rehabbed. So in that, I'm certainly supportive. And I think the pharmacy would give some retail sales tax revenue. I think that's a good thing. The cost of all of the equipment that you're suggesting is exorbitant in this time of healthcare. I guess my concern is I hope that the project continues forward and into completion, because the history has shown that it has stagnant. So as much as I'm supportive of rehabbing that area, I guess there's a caution of whether it's going to happen or not. So I hope it does. I hope it does.
I have concerns, as to John alluded, that it would be very advantageous if this were to go forward, that there be written agreements between the property owners for through traffic, at the very least.
And I'll preface that by saying that would be preferred. However, if it's a requirement that the owner
Can't control.
provide cross-access, then at least the village can control that when the neighboring properties develop, and we can say, as a condition of site plan approval or whatever, you must have cross-access with this property who will have already agreed to that.
Correct. So that should be an agreement at the very least from this property.
Right.
Okay, that makes all the sense in the world. Secondly, I'm really not too happy about this, that this thing was started without any thorough thought process, or how this started without permits.
It did have permits. It was
Yeah,
a
but
village.
it wasn't allowed at the time. A medical office down in there, I don't think was allowed, was it?
Well, it wasn't technically allowed, but it wasn't caught.
Well, the TIF hadn't been passed at
No,
that time.
TIF
I don't mean the
wasn't-
TIF, but I mean
but
the
the
zoning.
C1
It
district
wasn't
wasn't.
zoning.
It's a C1.
Right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't permitted under the zoning at the time.
Of course, the owner could have informed staff he was just doing a remodel for an existing office building. I don't know if he mentioned that it was specifically for medical.
Yeah. And at the very, very least, that canopy would have to go, the streetscape would have to match what, as far as I'm concerned, I'm only speaking for myself, the streetscape would have to meet what we're going to see at Mariano's, because we're probably going to use that for pretty much of our whole TIF. I would like to see a thicker density in the back, because the houses to the east rise. So that 6-foot fence would not really block out too well car headlights shining at night into back windows and backyards. And thirdly, to be quite honest with you, you have some property there that looks terrible. Why can't you at least cut the grass? When I was there a couple hours ago, it, oh, well, maybe he better lower the blade on his lawnmower, because he's not doing a very good job. It looks terrible. Okay, so I think, any further comments from the boards as to what you think should be incorporated? John, please.
Just one comment. It's very difficult for pharmacies in this day and age, little pop-up pharmacies within a small building like this, to operate and be successful. The pharmacies are dominated by the CVS, the Walgreens. Even within hospitals, they don't run their own. It's all, if you have some economies of scale, a Walgreens may go within a hospital. They may have a real difficult time getting a pharmacy in there, and the compliance issues are ridiculous for pharmacies to operate these days. So, great staff suggestion, but I would recommend having the applicant explore that in detail and try and provide some firm commitments that that's a feasible option, because I think at the end of the day, they're gonna say, sure, we'll do that, and in good faith say that, and at the 11th hour say, I can't find anyone to come in and run a pharmacy here.
Okay, we'll work with them on that as well.
Do they have someone, do you have someone already lined up as a pharmacist?
Yeah, we talked to a few people. They want to register.
It's going to be hard.
Then perhaps at our next meeting, if you would have the pharmacist also, who intends to operate this pharmacy, if they could accompany the doctor, that would help us greatly. Any further comments? Okay,
Motion to postpone to our June 10th meeting and to continue the open hearing, public hearing.
Second.
motion by Commissioner Pill, seconded by Commissioner Van Buren. A question on the motion. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Pill,
Yes.
Commissioner Partel,
Yes.
Commissioner Carmichael,
Yes.
Commissioner Sharp,
Yes.
and Chairman Richard.
Yes. Okay, we have voted to move you on to hold you till next month. And if you would get together with Jill and for a definite date and time. Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, Planning and Zoning Item 15016, Village of Westmont regarding a zoning code text amendment as follows. A, amend Appendix A, Section 4.05 of the Westmont Zoning Code and Chapter 18, Article 8 of the Municipal Code and Appendix C, Schedule of Fees, Taxes, and Charges regarding fence regulations. Staff?
Next up, we have Nick Weinert, our new building commissioner. He's going to talk about some proposals for amending our fence regulations within the zoning code to hopefully make our situation improved. And with that, I'll turn things over to Nick.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
I started in Village here in February, and I was surprised that we really didn't have a installation standard for fencing. And I also felt that the fees charged to residents were high in order to install a fence. The background on this a little bit is that when a fence is installed, when fence permit is pulled, we verify lot lines and the type of fence that's installed, make sure people don't install a fence in the front yard per se or block a corner. Also, you don't, for example, don't want barbed wire in a residential district. So by having a plat of survey submitted in that, we go and we verify lot lines as far as the plat of survey. We also are wanting to go and install fences with the good side out. Currently, we do not have any standard for asking for Julie. Dig at your own risk right now, where we should actually request or recommend that Julie be contacted. We do require a permit, and I was surprised to find that we do not do an inspection for post holes. Much easier to move a fence or change the location prior to installation, and then also to go out after a fence is installed to make sure that it's installed straight in line with what the drawing is, what's on the permit. Somebody will say, I'm putting in a 3-foot fence in the front, and you go there and it's a 6-foot fence. So it's not installed according to the permit. It's much easier to address at that time than it is years later. The goal here is actually to have a standard, and the goal is also to reduce the fee for the residents by 50%. Currently, there's a $75 permit charge, $25 plan review, $50 post hole inspection. In order to reimburse the village for some of its time, and also to have a straight flat fee of $75. Would you like me to, any questions for me? Mom, okay, so part of the standard is right now we have nothing for post hole depth. Many places install post holes down to 42 inches. However, doing so requires extensions on augers and makes it difficult. 42 inches is the standard due to frost heave, and 36 is where most augers go to. The frost line is based on worst case condition in the Chicagoland area. Typically, we do not get down that deep for frost. So, does this thing work? Turn this around. So we have here is a scale that says what the average frost was last February, which is extremely cold. And you'll see it's down to maybe 32 inches in our area, not the 42 like you would typically see. The reason we're trying to establish a standard is so that we avoid the frost heave that you typically see, which is on this cyclone fence. You'll notice that all the post holes, all the posts are, all the holes have heaved out of the ground. By installing a post more in line with a typical standard, whether it be straight or slightly bell, as I should have in your handout I passed out just before the meeting, you'll see that it prevents frost heave. And by being deep enough, we'll end up not having problems such as this, where we have boards holding up the fences. These are all pictures from the village of Westmont, by the way, driving down the alleys. Also, we'll not have a problem with fences such as this bottom picture. Excuse me, my first time using this, where there aren't angles. Or, in the case of this, other type of fences in the village, where they are, as you can see here, at an angle, due to frost and post holes from heaving. So the goal here from today is to amend the ordinance so that we can, once again, just to reiterate, have some kind of standard and reduce the fees by 50% and hopefully improve the aesthetics in the village by not having premature failure of post holes. We do have a procedure for decks, for post holes. That's still no guarantee even with decks, but we have nothing for fences. Yes.
You were talking about before issuing a permit for a fence that a plat of survey?
Yes.
The existing plat would be okay, or are you going to send somebody out for a new plat?
We don't send anybody out for a plat. We ask for the current plat of survey.
Sure.
If they can give us one. A lot of times we also look in village records. Our staff is also very good at Google Earth to kind of see what's on the property, to see if the survey is current.
Yeah.
And verify lot lines, setbacks, easements, floodways, and all that off the plat of survey.
I think it's a good idea to have a standard on that, because we see so many of these fences this way. And it's always the post.
Correct.
The fence will stay standing.
Right. So in the handout that you were given prior to the meeting from a week ago, it has in here some things that we'd like to establish. One is that we are there to verify post hole depth, not lot lines. We're not doing the survey, so village is not responsible if the fence is slightly over a line in neighborhood disputes. We're asking that a fence faces out, good side out, which is typical, instead of putting the bad side or structural side out, good neighbor policy. And then also, we're asking for a minimum depth of 36 inches without having to use special equipment. And then also a flat fee, as I stated before.
Would you say that last part again? I missed it.
And also a flat fee, as I stated before.
And in addition to what is contained in the draft ordinance that was passed out, there's going to be some internal requirements. I assume, for example, it says that the post shall be embedded 36 inches. Doesn't define really what embedded is, but I assume internally you're going to have a permit application form that's going to say, well, what that means. And I assume it's poured concrete to a certain...
Right, we would prefer that it be poured concrete. However, if you're digging post holes in an extremely wet area, we just had a fence installed for you, is that correct?
Yes.
Mr. Sharp? And what they did there is they treated the post, installed them, or we'd ask that the posts be installed maybe in gravel or road mix, simply for drainage. It was extremely wet area, but concrete would be the preferred method. The taller the fence, the greater the wind load. Then it starts to rock. Wind blows one way, pushes everything one way. Wind blows the other way, eventually loosens the holes. Eventually what you end up with is you end up with a fence like this one here on Cass Avenue. This fence right here, as you can see from Cass Avenue, just north of Ogden, where it's getting all pushed one way from the winds,
Prevailing.
prevailing winds pushing the fence away. This is in a commercial zone. So embedded, we probably maybe need to change that, make it the preferred method is concrete.
And I think the staff write-up mentioned an indemnification provision for the benefit of the village. So if someone comes in for a permit, it's going to include indemnification language that in the event they build across a lot line, we're held harmless. Is that something that's, again, part of the permit process, but not necessarily contained in the ordinance?
I would think that you maybe have that on something that you sign on a fence permit that you put together, but it should be part of the ordinance, and the fact that if the fence, as we've seen, slightly wanders a little bit, that we're not held liable because we're not out there actually verifying the plat of survey.
We're not qualified surveyors to
That's correct.
determine if a fence.
There's nothing to stop a homeowner from taking a survey stick or stake and moving it a foot one way or the other.
So I guess my question is that something that's not, it's not contained in this draft ordinance, is that something that you think should be in the draft ordinance, or is that something that was just going to be as part of staff protocol and procedure? It's a document that gets signed every time someone's putting up a fence.
I think that should be part of a application for a fence, and if a homeowner doesn't sign it, he doesn't get a permit.
Yeah, we've seen it
Simple.
both ways. You know, some villages have it within their, you know, permit application materials, and some of it have it more written out in the ordinance. So I think we're flexible, you know, legally.
I don't care one way or the other, as long as it's,
If we incorporate it, as far as you're concerned, then in the permit application, that this indemnification is there, we're off the hook.
right.
Okay, that makes sense to me then.
And John, if I may add, because I did draft the ordinance and was looking at the code, and it was kind of a 50-50 toss-up when I was looking at the comparable communities. Some would just make notes on the permit itself. Some would actually put it into the ordinance. I kind of put it in without the actual indemnification language, but here where in section 2, under the general provisions for accessory structures, I put fences may be installed up to the property line. No part of the fence, including posthole excavation, may extend beyond the property line without being indicated on a plat of survey and without written approval of the adjacent property owner. So that's how I was trying to address an indemnification in the ordinance without actually stating it in there, and I'm sure it could be improved if need be.
Well, I think the question is, do we add a sentence that says an application for a fence permit shall include indemnification of the village?
That's what I would feel comfortable
It's
in.
a simple sentence, it's in the ordinance. We can require it at staff level, but if it's challenged, I guess it's better to have it in the ordinance.
Well, we're covered if it's
Does
in
it
the
sound good
ordinance.
to
I
you,
think
Joe?
we just had a situation with the previous applicant where we saw something that was missed, and it's led to 5 years of hearings and discussions and all kinds of stuff. So if we can make it simpler and have a blanket coverage with that at the top,
You'll make sure.
I think that's a good way to go.
Everything is in there. Thanks.
Nick, I have a question about the chart that we were handed out last week. It says 42 inches for wood, 36 inches for metal. I know that now you're saying 36 inches, just blanket statement due to tool restrictions.
Well, it's not
Do you have, I
that,
mean, do you have concerns about if it's a 6-foot wooden privacy fence and it's just 3 foot of post hole depth?
well, the 3-foot post hole depth really is not really, it's a double-edged sword. Is it really structural, or is it really to prevent frost heave? The goal here is really to prevent frost heave. If it's 36 inches in the ground, it's installed straight, it's embedded in concrete, I don't think you have a problem with the fence moving or heaving on you as much as you do when the post hole's only 2 foot deep. It's shaped like an upside-down bell or a cone. We're trying to make it where there's some kind of standard where everybody's augering holes nowadays, they're straight, or if they were to bell them. Or even if we were to pass out some flyer when we do this, here's a recommended way to install a post in a hole to minimize any kind of problems. The 42 inches and 36 inches, you can verify that as far as digging But nowadays, most large fence companies that are putting cyclone fences are not digging any holes. They just stand a 10-foot post where they think it's going to be, where it should be, and then you pneumatically drive it into the ground without digging a hole. There's no way for you to verify 36 or 42. They can put a line on there and drive down to that line, but you just never know. And by the time they go back there and they cut the top of the post off, how far do you know it's really in the ground?
Right. Okay.
What would we be doing for a time limit so that we could have timely, if someone were to dig post holes, a timely inspection when they're scheduling some contractor to come in and put this fence in? Because many times, the contractor shows up, digs the holes, puts the posts in, and all at the same time.
What ends up happening is that currently the way the building department is operating is it's a 24-hour notice. So when they pick up their permit, seldom does somebody pick up their permit that morning and ask for an inspection in 2 hours. You know, by the time they get everything out, lay everything out, and do everything, we typically try to push for 24 hours, but it's not uncommon for us to go out on the same day.
Okay.
You know, when it's a post hole, it's not like we have to spend hours inspecting a building.
No, I know.
I know that from your sheet here, it looks like we would be the first village in all the villages surveyed that would have post-hole inspection. I see a list of 10 or 12, whatever there are here, no's under that. Does that sort of seem like it's then overkill for us? Are we getting in people's business too much, or the fact that nobody else around us is doing it?
Well,
There's a lot of no's on this sheet.
Yeah, I know. I was concerned about that too. Joe did put that sheet together, but I'd like you to do is I'd like you to look at the last column.
Finals. There's a lot of yes.
Finals. If you would look at the last column on that, you'll notice that half do a final and half don't. I think that we should adopt a proactive policy of inspecting the fences before they're installed, because it's much easier to move a post hole than it is to move a fence after it's installed. That's why I'm also going outside this topic, doing the same thing with pre-pours for driveways and sidewalks. Much easier to move the driveway before you pour all the concrete.
So there'd be 2 inspections then, basically?
Yes.
It would be, okay.
And the village was charging $50 an inspection for residential, but that's why we went to go to flat fee. It is better for us, the residents in the village, to inspect the post holes. And then at our convenience, we go on there in a final, just to make sure it's straight. What they said's on the permit's on the permit, and that, not necessarily going to come out the next day and do an inspection, but we'll wait maybe once or twice a week or once every 2 weeks. We'll go out and look at a bunch of fences at that time at our convenience. So it's not really a big cost to us per se, because we're already out in the village, in that area of the village doing other inspections.
Okay.
Yeah, the intention is to make it more efficient for the village while also providing a much more cost-effective permit for the homeowner. When we saw how much higher our fence fee was compared to other communities, it just didn't make sense, so.
Well, the left column really shows that.
It really does.
But then again, too, if you look at that, you'll see that no for inspections, no for post holes, no for anything. I just want your money and you're not getting anything for it, except your piece of paper says permit.
Well, we didn't have any inspections either, right?
I think we only do finals, if I'm right.
Final. Which is why we charge the $150, because to incorporate that inspection fee.
I see.
Jill, a question. On the worksheet here, wherever we have under Westmont items proposed, all of, say like require good side out, require sharp edges down, neighbor permission to connect, restrictions back to back, et cetera. That's all covered in here.
Correct.
All of your proposals are covered in here.
I'll address that since I put that together.
Please.
The initial, when I started my research with the other communities, those were all the topics that either we saw in everyone else's ordinances or were being recommended by the building commissioner. After discussions, we kind of narrowed it down to what's the most important to us. So, for example, we did say that it should be the good side out, or the frame should face the internal.
Okay.
But we didn't make the restriction on the back-to-back after discussions.
So that's omitted then?
Yes.
Okay.
But those are also up for discussion too. If the commission, feels that's something that should be incorporated, we can do that.
Just so I get with the lingo, back-to-back is
Back-to-back
Two
fencing, I have a
fences
picture there.
back-to-back, and you
Here's what
want to
this-
have the good side facing the other good side?
Right.
Nobody could see it then?
Well, here's what happens if you look at this picture. It's difficult to see. This is a cyclone fence with a wood fence next to it, with the wood fence being supported by the cyclone fence. Now, I have other pictures. I didn't know that would be what we were going to bring up. Let me just see if I can find another one.
So typically, a homeowner would want to do this if they didn't like the fence that was
Oh, I know
adjacent
why, yeah.
to them, so.
So that's one of the reasons we always try to have good side out instead of looking at the back side of a fence. And then something that you brought up was sharp points, especially important along public ways and sidewalks, is that you don't want to have the sharp points up. Kids drive by on a bicycle, stick their hand out, goodbye, time to go get some stitches. These are all fences from the village.
Any further comments, commissioners?
No, I'd just like to say that I think this was a very well put together proposal. So I don't know if it was all three of you, or if it was Joe, or
Mostly these two.
mostly those two. Well, it's very kind of you, Mother Duck. But, no,
No
this
comment.
made a lot of sense, and I appreciate the effort that went into putting this together. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I also would, I appreciate this bringing these codes up to snuff, and it just helps us in the village.
Well, it helps having a fresh look at our codes, having Nick in the office. He's been processing a lot of permits, going out in the field, doing a lot of inspections. And so that fresh perspective, has had us, take a look at a lot of things. And it's giving Joe a lot of good experience, writing some new text amendments. So we'd like to keep bringing you things to improve.
Any further comments?
Just, it's always nice to have these grids, these comparisons, because we really don't know what Elmhurst or Glen Ellen are doing, and not that they're doing it better or worse, but I just appreciate that, because it gives me a good, broader perspective, so thank you for your work as well.
Well, it really gives you an idea as to all the thought and the work that they've gone into to draft this ordinance.
A lot of work.
A lot of work.
And I'm just wondering if, we're going to consider reducing this fee from $150 to $75, if we can make it retroactive to when I put my fence in.
Or my fence.
Or Commissioner Sharp.
I would think so, Doug.
It sounds like an excellent idea.
Okay, seeing no further comments, I would entertain a motion to recommend approval to the Board of Trustees under Planning and Zoning Item 15016, Item A, amend Appendix A, Section 4.05 of the Westmont Zoning Code and Chapter 18, Article 8 of the Municipal Code, and Appendix C, Schedule of Fees, Taxes, and Charges regarding fence regulations.
So moved?
Second?
Motion by Commissioner Bartel, seconded by Commissioner Van Buren. A question on the motion? May we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Pill?
Yes.
Commissioner Bartel?
Yes.
Commissioner Carmichael?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Buren votes yes. Commissioner Sharp?
Yes.
And Chairman Richard?
Yes. Again, thanks you folks for all your hard work. Appreciate it. That covers our agenda. Any commissioner comments? Any staff?
No further comments?
Okay. Again, welcome to Commissioner Sharp.
Welcome.
Welcome.
And motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Pill, seconded by Commissioner Carmichael. All in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned.